When you partner with Axon, you immediately gain access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. We carry all major brands and sizes of tires and wheels. We specialize in large diameter wheels for large equipment. We have one of the largest OEM replacement wheel inventories in North America. Known for extreme flotation setups, duals, and triples, we have wheels for all makes and models of tractors, sprayers, combines, and grain carts. If we don't have the wheel in stock, we'll custom build, sandblast, and paint in-house. There isn't a more vast inventory in North America dedicated to helping dealers move more iron. With facilities on the West Coast and in the heart of the Midwest, leverage our 230,000 square feet of indoor inventory to solve any problem a grower may have. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving iron. Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. I got Jason Houl back on again from Anvil AppWorks. Jason, how you doing today?
Doing very well. I've had a great holiday and ready to end the year strong.
Awesome, man. I'm right there with you. This is that big push into the end of the year, right? Most people's, end of the year kind of happens at calendar. Some folks are, odd months throughout the year, but overwhelming majority of people are at the end of the year as you look at the different aspects of what's going on there. We talked about a few things before we got started here, and we were kind of both talking about this back and forth. But as you take a look at 24, as I take a look at what's going on right now and the feelings that I'm getting from people I talk with about 2024 is that people it almost feels like there's more uncertainty now than there was in 13 going into 14, right? Everybody knew 14 was going to be a rough year, just didn't know how bad it was going to be, but everybody's kind of bracing for that. 14 happened, and 15 people like us going to continue to be worse, But right now it's an odd feeling that no one understands, and I'm kind of one of them. We have two huge things happen to us here as the economy starts to normalize again. You've got, if you take a look at where interest rates were in 2019, where interest rates are today, it's some crazy like 600 or 800% increase in interest rates over that course of time. If you look at where how used equipment is starting to normalize back out again as supply and demand start catching back up with things, and more equipment gets pushed out of the factories, you start seeing those things happen. So, I want to say that this economy that we see right now is not a bad economy. It's just things are normalizing again, right? The bubble got popped, and now we got the party's over, and we got to clean the mess up now. So that's kind of where we're at. But as you're looking at this and you're talking to folks, what are some of the feelings that you're getting from the people you're talking with?
There's, you nailed it at the beginning there, a little bit of realization, because not only are we looking forward right now saying what is 24 going to look like, we're also realizing how we're going to end 23.
Right.
And, what were we thinking in January and February and December of last year and thinking where we were going to end? There were a lot of folks kind of like, well, it's going to get better. It's going to change. It's going to do this. We'll just catch up, or we'll make those calls a little bit later. Well, now's later for 23. Right. So they're really kind of settling with where we're at right now, those interest rate environments, et cetera. Back at the Moving Iron Summit, we talked to a lot of folks there as well. And that was a really good opportunity for us to hear carrying costs. We heard that over and over again, carrying costs, and how do we know what it is, and and how do we find the right customer, and how do we move the inventory faster? It really got people to think a little bit, tighter around their inventory, just knowing what a carrying cost was. We had one dealer talk to us about it. It was really interesting because he said that he's like, before this year, that was just a line on the P&L that I looked at, but I had no real impact over it.
Right.
Because it was there and it was just same, and it was the same every year. Yeah. And now he's like, now I know what that line is, and I know how to affect it and make some changes. The other dealer comment we had around that as well was just, they were able to really see where they were able to impact that number. The being able to move things through that sold to invoiced time frame is very important right now, as we're talking about the interest rates and such that we've got. So they're starting to really watch that, send it out automatically every week. They're running over reports of what has been sold, when it arrived, trying to get that down. And, we're seeing some benefit, because that's where technology really helps as well, is don't give me 5,000 pieces of inventory, give me the ones that I need to focus on is where technology is really good at. And we've been able to have an impact with that. We've seen dealers really move the needle with some focus, being able to cut down on that sold to invoice time. And you take a week or two out of that entire cycle, especially on some of these bigger units, or even just a few days, but you do that consistently, deal after deal. It really takes some of the sting out. It's still there, but the dealers have really started looking at that as well. Then as they're going into 24, I think that's starting to have some impact on margin goals as well.
Absolutely.
Well, we're having those conversations as well, as how do we build that into our trade assessment cycle? How do we build that into our calculations so that we have, expected sale, expected turn? How long should we be planning to keep this unit, knowing that we're talking substantial dollars anymore as well? And then the last thing that we've heard some on 24 is just a budget of inventory, not because of how much floor plan you have, how much floor plan can you afford at the sales as well, and trying to maintain that. So your number is going to be bigger, but can you control it at least to be what it's going to be? And I think that's important as well. You can't let it get away from you anymore, is the story we're hearing. You have to actively manage it.
Yep. And that's a good point you brought up when you're looking at it. For the last 20 years, almost 20 years, I guess, not quite 20 years, but last 20 years, we've been dealing with interest rates that have been, the prime interest rate was 0%. And, you start looking, the Fed rate was 0%. Prime rate was like 2.5%, right?
Yeah.
So you were dealing with these 2.5% interest rates forever. And then all of a sudden, now you start looking at this. Businesses have built their entire portfolio around, I can pay a lot of interest before I take a $70,000 hickey at an auction, right?
Yes.
And today you're looking like that $70,000 hickey actually is probably a better move for me to do this today than it is for me to wait and see what happens over that course of time. Because when you're looking at 7.5% interest rates, you're looking at that's $7,500 on every $100,000 you have sitting out there.
Yeah.
Right? You have 6 of those $100,000 sitting in the same spot. You got $42,000, $45,000 sitting there pretty ready to go. And if you start breaking that out by how long it's for every day, month, time, however you want to measure that, you're talking $3,500 to $5,000 a month for that one machine just to set on your lot and look pretty. That's a hell of a valet fee if you start putting it into perspective. And that's
it is
that and I think that's what your system I think does a really good job of is that managing that life cycle of that machine through your CRM process.
Yeah. A lot of what we're trying to do is not rocket science, but it's just hard to do at scale. And that's where having a good platform and the technology that we offer really helps. It's there's only so many levers that you can pull in the used equipment industry. You can market it better, you can buy it better, you can sell it quicker, you can make more money on it. And what we basically now have is a new lever to affect that. And I think you nailed it. Profitability can be determined by turns and time to sell. Probably even more so than just margin realization, because you're going to have a bigger impact there. And that's a lever that we have not pulled, not been in our toolkit for a long time. So that's very interesting. The other part of it is finding those people who want to buy it. That zero inventory, goal there. How do we get it sold before it moves through? Well, better visibility up front, getting it in front of people that we have it, doing that at scale, finding the problem children before they cost you a lot of money. It used to be, like you said, with lower interest, we started reviewing inventory once it got 6 months old. Right. And we hoped everything else. Now we're like, how do we catch it at 2 weeks that it doesn't have any pictures? How do we catch it at, 2 weeks that it's priced wrong? And that's where some of the tools that like we've got here on our CRM and some of the Tractor Zoom Pro tools that we're integrated in with really help us compare that piece of equipment to other ones you have and the industry, and do it in just a few minutes instead of manual compilation, data analysis, spreadsheets, and emails. You can just kind of go down through there. And where technology also leverages is kind of that alert piece. So it's one thing to have 10 combines, but it's another one to have the system say, and this one is not priced like the other ones. Look at this one. Because again, we're trying to do more with less. So using the technology to point that out as well. So it's the same. I always say that things are a combination of great people, you doing a great process with great technology. And that's what we're bringing to the table, is that technology piece that lets all the things we've been doing, but now you can do it for a larger population with more information, taking into account all the things that we've talked about as challenges in the past. That's what we're trying to deliver, so that we can buy it better, we can market it better, we can advertise it better, and we can sell it.
Yep. And I think you hit something there too when you're looking at, I think 3 things have been, the Walking Dead have come back alive here. If you take a look what's going on. So 3 things I think have really happened. One is pipeline management is getting to be, you hear more people talking about that in our industry than on the ag side, especially, than we've ever heard in the past, right?
Yeah.
What's your pipeline look like? What do you have coming through? What's your settlement dates? All these different things. When can you get the money? Blah, 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 blah. You're hearing all those things. That's a little different than what we've heard in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, how fast can we sell this thing? What's that look like? How long are we going to keep it here?
Yeah.
And I think the third thing is, people are now starting to look at washout cycles from the day one. If Casey bought it, the new one, he's trading it in. Jason's going to buy his trade in, and Ted's going to buy Jason's trade in. Fred's going to buy Ted's trade in. Okay, good. We're good. We're going to do this all in 1 week, and we're going to bang this out. We're going to be done. More and more of those conversations and more of that strategy start to come in and start to play out. And when you're looking at how those customers are dealing with that, the only way you can know if you have this stuff, if you can do this, is who are your customers and what are they doing? How often they come to the table? How often they go in there? And that's like the 4-letter word that's 3 letters, CRM, that nobody wants to talk about. That's what that is. That's what drives that function. And we're seeing more and more people start to jump on that CRM bandwagon.
It is, because as salespeople, trying to look at how many customers we have to take care of. It's a couple hundred usually, if not more than that. And just knowing which ones have you called on recently, which ones are there. If you're just trying to do basic salesmanship of saying, this person I need to call at least once a month or once a quarter or once a week, that gets hard to manage over time. And that's where the CRMs can really come in. In our system, you have a calendar. Here's what's coming up. Regardless of their setting, here's what next week is, who you should be looking at. Here's what this month should be looking at. And we know that in this market, doing better follow-ups, doing better check-ins on current customers, how is that machine working for you, higher satisfaction, all of these reasons we can call on that. And that's where when you go to call on that customer, you have so many more reasons to contact them, and you're so much better informed by knowing, when did you buy the Gator last? When are you buying this tractor? What's the used equipment cycle? And really, doing some good stuff on it. We've also seen dealers take that same information from the CRM, and it's not just to the salesperson. What we've also seen is a substantial increase in the number of dealers using modern digital marketing tools. And what that means is taking your customer base and dividing it. Right. And personas are becoming big. Demographics are coming big. Who is my hay producers? Back when when I was doing dealer work as well, marketing was a monthly newsletter, and you sent the same one to everybody.
Yeah.
And now being able to send specials, sending advertisements, sending targeted emails and follow-ups, and even text messages to those customers now, and not be peanut buttered, but allowing you to be precise. That's where the CRM foundation is. And I really mean it. It is the foundation. Like you said, the 4-letter word. But as you build that foundation of who they are, what type of farmer they are, what engagement they have with your dealership, now you can really do some of those more modern, personalized marketing that honestly customers are expecting.
Right.
You can't open your email box and not getting a personalized email from Target or Amazon telling, this is the piece of equipment, this is the thing you should buy. Why can't dealers do the same thing? And that's what we're also seeing being leveraged, the CRM for it.
Yeah, and that's you made a good point there. The thing about the CRM side of it, it does let you go in there and start to really look at your customer base and start saying, okay, this customer doesn't need to get the 4-wheel drive flyer, right? They need to get the 1025R or the 1725 Massey or whatever it is that they're doing. They're getting that designed piece of equipment to them, right? This guy has 5 acres, not 2,000, so probably doesn't need to have a 150 horsepower tractor coming their way, unless they just want one. But I mean, and we're happy to sell it to you. But
exactly.
But it's one of those deals where, as you're looking through that customer base, one is you're gonna start looking at, all right, bang for your buck. Where do I need to spend the most money at? What am I trying to do? And right now, I mean, in today's marketplace, because of the way new interest rates are and those kind of things, if you start looking at the cut marketplace and these manufacturers are doing 0% till whenever they decide not to do it anymore, you start looking at the used side of that. If you get a used piece that's $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 less than a new one, you factor in interest on top of that. Yeah, you're really not getting that better. You might as well buy the new one. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think then that's some of the issues that we start seeing there. But if you're looking at, okay, how are we going to go out and try to find who's going to be the person we need to have when you start looking at a used, compact utility tractor someplace? Yeah, that spend that money where you need to spend it, and not just hopefully that if you throw enough pieces of paper out there, someone's going to find one. And that's having a more targeted, strategic, knife approach and not chainsaw approach. You do a hell of a lot better when you start coming and look at your marketing. You do. And one of our dealers has really done something really innovative into that space. They're marketing to the type of equipment that customer has purchased. So, of course, they're marking every customer in their CRM with, are they a combine customer? Are they a sprayer customer? Are they a planter customer? Are they a compact tractor utility customer or a hay customer? And the automation tools that we have on the platform allows us to say, we just invoice this person a combine, go check the box that says they're a combine customer on their profile. And that's the type of thing being on one platform allows us to do. Because if you think about the amount of upkeep it would take to try to do that manually, that your marketing department is constantly curating a list of customers to send sprayer related information to, it'd drive them crazy. You'd have to add several people just to maintain a spreadsheet. We're doing that automatically through the tools because we're hooked up to the business system. We're hooked up to the quoting system. We're hooked up and talking to all the systems, as well as then we're covering all of that. So when something gets invoiced over here, it talks back to the CRM and says, now this person is now part of that group, which then interacts with the marketing and says, now I have another customer to put in this demographic loop. And it's so much better. In the old days, before we had the ability to build our own profile, it was like, well, we'll do a mailer to this zip code, right? Okay, that's a compact, that's an area where we think there's compact buyers. So we'll just blanket a whole zip code. Now we can be much more surgical with it and make those dollars go a lot further. So it's fun to see this. It is. I mean, watching this stuff grow and you start looking at how things are coming together, it's the same. Like I always tell people, used equipment is the simplest thing on the planet. It's just the hardest thing to do, right? You know what I mean? Losing weight is pretty simple. All you got to do is go out and run or lift weights or go whatever you're going to do. It's just doing it. It's the hard part, right? And I think that's the exact same analogy when you're looking at used equipment. So it's an ever changing thing, and right now it's one of those things where you have to act now. You can't just stick your head in the sand and hope good things happen, because you have to go out and look at what's going on around you. So it's crazy. And that really kind of drives us into looking at what are we going to do next year, which is both sales forecasting. When are we getting machines in? Before we're like, here's our coming in planners. Well, now you've got to look at when you're getting it in, when's it going to be ready, how do you turn that around, when is it going to be available, and doing that type of follow up. We've got several dealers that are looking at sold ahead to still plan that, as well as just the fact of, while we're dealing with the inventory concerns, customers' expectations are still going up.
So being able to be the first dealer to call back, if they're perusing advertising for a tractor buy or a combine buy, you still have to give exceptional customer service, which means, can you answer their questions? A lot of times the customers know more about the piece of equipment they're calling about than the person on the other end of the phone. That's another area we try to deliver on, is that inventory 360 of knowing the work order history, knowing what you've done to it, where's it at, seeing all the pictures, both internal and external, so that whoever is taking that call, they can accurately answer those questions. We have a dealer who has totally centralized all inbound advertising calls. The old adage was send it to the store because they're the ones who know about that piece of equipment. But now they're coming back in, they're centralized that, and the person on the phone has all the information they need to answer the questions, but they can do it quickly. They can be the first to call back. They can take that much better care of the customer, and they can be trained on selling over the phone, which is a completely different skill set than being a field rep as well. So that's another area that I think is going to increase in 24, is that expectation is going to ratchet up. They have the same cost pressure, the same inventory and interest pressure, and they're going to be looking for that great sales experience, which means feedback, follow-up, and great information.
Yeah, so there's, as I'm looking out at 24, I mean, some of the things I think, if you look from the producer standpoint and where they're at, I mean, you start looking at some of these guys I've talked to out there. I mean, you got some of these guys their operating notes, they're at 8, 9, 10%, and you start looking at some of the dollars that they're using to operate on top of that. That's a lot of money. That's, you're starting to squeeze out profitability, and what does that look like, and how does that work, and what am I doing here, and what kind of payment structures am I looking at? And equipment loans are 7.5% to 8%, depending on what you're looking at there. I mean, so this is just it's a snowball effect. And Sean Hackett's on here all the time talking about weather stuff and what's going on there and what you see happening. And there's some opportunity for the United States to have a decent year next year, especially if the stuff in Brazil continues that we see happening down there with drought and whatever else they got going on as far as weather goes. They got flooding in one area and epic drought in another. So I mean, it's like best of both worlds. I can't, you can't win for trying down there. So as things are moving along there, you have some opportunities. But I think this interesting is going to continue to be a situation. Yeah. And I think the biggest situation that we have to worry about more than anything is who's going to buy the $400,000 used piece, the $500,000 used piece, and what's that look like, and how's that come around? Our trade value situations, as you're looking at some of these bigger deals, like where's that separation between new and used, and what's that look like? Those are going to be some problems we start having to deal with more than we ever had before. And how are you going to adjust for holding costs? I think that is such a most people don't have that built in to their used equipment values. I mean, I want to make X percent margin. Here's my recon cost, here's my trucking costs. Yeah. Here's what the market says it's worth as far as advertising pricing goes, and here's what I think I can sell it for. So, this is this is what the soup looks like right today. Now you're going to have like, okay, well, yeah, this is what the soup looks like, but we know exactly what's going to take to make that soup now. We're not just throwing a bunch of stuff in the pot and hope that we get something that tastes good. Like, we're pretty sure that this is what we need. These are the ingredients that we need to make this work. And you watch this stuff transpire and transpose, and it's going to be interesting to watch how people adapt from a situation where the process is what it has always been for the last 25 years, that process, to where some of these folks are going to come in here and like, we're starting over again. And this is our process. So it's going to be interesting to watch how that plays out.
It is, especially as the dealers come together. There's a couple of things. I'm sold. I went through Dr. Weber's class, the consultant out there telling everybody how to sell things. And I remember sitting in class laughing at him, talking about, we were all chuckling to ourselves thinking, he wants us to consider when we're going to sell it and then adjust the price based upon how long we have to hold the machine. That's just crazy. Nobody does that. Well, here we are today talking about exactly that 25 years later, in that mode. But as you said, as they're adjusting, the other thing that I'm predicting for 24 that is going to happen is exactly that. They're going to have to look internally. The days of taking 2 or 3 days to turn around a used equipment quote, the days of being able to evaluate and get back in a few days. The expectation is our farmers are running their farm off their phone. They can look at their phone and see what the combine's doing. Right. They've invested in technology, and they're going to appreciate the dealer that is invested in technology as well. Their expectation is when the salesperson's out on the farm taking pictures and evaluating their machine, they should be able to do that, submit it before they've left the farm. They should be talking numbers. And that's what we had a customer tell us. Was one of their customers said they did that, the 20-minute turnaround, and got it back to them. And the farmer said, finally, you guys are using that same technology stuff you've been telling me to buy for years. And, that's the effect is they're high-tech operations and they're moving forward. And you're going to have to look about how do you keep up with them as well.
Yeah, I think that's the fundamental part of that. I think that is more prevalent than anything out there at all, is that understanding and knowing what machines, what's the machinery worth right now. Yeah. And then how are you looking at what trend lines have done in the past, and what's that look like? I mean, it's not like this is the first, build up and then, inflation issue that we've come through. I mean, you can go back and look at 2009 to 2010, what that looked like and how that impacted 2012, right? And then moving into 12, 14 and those kind of things. The biggest difference now is, I think the only time frame that in my mind that I can think of where something like this happened, where there was an inflationary period leading into a boom and into a bust type of deal, would be like the late 70s, going out of like 75, 76, going into 77, 78, and then suddenly and all of a sudden 80 hits and we see this correction of sorts, or with this high interest rates and those kind of things take off. The only thing that's missing in that scenario from then was, $500,000 machines, $600,000 machines. That's the biggest difference right now. And you look at what's going on. I will argue, and anyone, anyone that was lived that era in the 80s tells me I'm stupid, but I'm going to argue that it's exactly the same right now because the numbers are so much bigger, right? Yeah. And I think that's one of the driving factors behind what we see happening. It might have been 20% interest back then, but it was 20% interest on $40,000 and $100,000, those kind of things. It wasn't 7, 8% interest on millions. And
I think it's the interest rate, but it's also we've got to reset our thinking there around trade difference is a percentage. It's not a dollar.
Exactly. Yep.
When we're talking a $500,000 piece of equipment and the spread between new and used changes significantly, it might double. The difference. It might go from $50,000 to $100,000, but that's still only an X percent of that machine. So as you're talking about the differences between a 2-year-old machine, a 3-year-old machine as well, with the inflationary on the pricing, and then now some of that settling in, you can't look at just the dollars anymore. You can't use, well, we always did this. This is those types of things. We always accounted for $1,000 per 100 horsepower or for every 100 separator hours. Right. You can't use those old dollar ratios anymore. You've got to look at what's the difference in percentage. Are we still trading for about 3% or 5% or 10%, or what's the numbers that come into there? And then build in also the inflation that's happened on the service side and the employment side and the labor rate side as well. You can't just use those old dollar amounts anymore to keep going forward. You got to think in ratios. And again, that's where technology does some of that math for you, where you can get the trade difference, but it'll also tell you what was the percentage of MDP, what is the percent differences, where are we at from here? Are you 2% off? Are you 1% off? Are you 10% off? Those are where things really can be used for trending, and kind of where we headed. Are we okay or not? Not raw dollars anymore. And that's another mindset as we're looking into the sales team for 24. Making sure that we're thinking that way.
Yep. So, you start. I've had this question come up a couple times now, where people are like, "Okay, so how we go out and balance our inventories for 24, and what's that look like, and how we doing those things?" I'm a Dr. Jim Weber disciple, and I've been one for a long time. And I really firmly believe that when you look at, hey, you know, these machines, when they come in, we know they're going to last this long, right? We know that they're going to be on the lot this long. Some of the stuff he has now it still holds water today.
Yep.
The only difference is
Absolutely.
that the numbers are bigger and probably the cost to hold them are significantly higher than they've ever been. So as you're looking at how we're going to balance stuff and what's that look like, I think this is the first time that I can really say that I think the auction values and retail values are going to be so tight when it comes to what their correlation is with each other heading into 24 and into 25, that it's going to be just like the construction market in a lot of ways, where we're going to be able to, you're giving, you know, premium at the dealership basically because you can offer me extended warranties and you can give me some interest rate waivers and blah, 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 and whatever it is, you know, that those different programs they have to offer that the auction doesn't offer. And I think that's going to be, we kind of saw that moving into, you know, 17 and 18, 19, we saw that starting to happen to where, hey, we're in that 15 to 20% range right now. And that's kind of what we saw. Right now, that's grossly out of whack right now, just because of what we saw, that same thing happen. But I think we're going to see that move back into play in 24. And so how do you go about managing your inventory and balancing your inventory? In my opinion, is you're just going to, there's going to be a lot of biting of bullets that you're just going to have to go do. And there's no easy way to get around it.
And doing it also at the right time. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of is that sales prediction and the sales forecasting is how many do we really expect to sell?
Yeah.
And it's kind of the retail model. You know, when they order in shirts, they order more than they think they're going to sell and they discount the last 10% of them down below, right? It's the same thing. I'm hearing dealers talk about that now. This is how many combines we think we're going to sell this year. And then that's going to generate this many trades. So that right away, you know, have we got more than we can sell coming in?
Yeah.
Well, we better do something about it now. Let's find the dogs in there before they get old, and let's just move them quickly because we know we've got more coming in as well. And balancing the inventory means balancing what I can sell with what I go out and buy. And if I bought more than I can sell, then I find a second channel for that other stuff and move the right machines there. Overall, it used to be, you know, call up Mexico and see which ones they would take off our lot. Now it's a lot more diverse from that, but it is still that idea of saying, planning ahead and forecasting, this is how many combines I think we can sell. And realistically, you're going to be within 4 or 5 units of that, usually.
For sure.
Right. Now, which machines, which size, which hours, that's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
But you can usually predict how many you're going to sell.
Yeah, it's not that part of it's not necessarily rocket science as much as it is just understanding what your market looks like and who you are. But it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. You've got to know who you're going to go talk to and what you're going to talk to them about. And it's hard to do that when everybody's got a yellow college ruled CRM on their desk. You know what I mean? So
11 by 17 is the advanced version.
That's right. So it's hard to know that. So I think just putting that information in one spot to where everybody can see it is so much. There's so much value.
And the other piece that you're seeing from technology helping, and some of the things that we're helping dealers with, is yes, we're still concerned about the margin and the turns for that specific unit, but they are so much more looking at the overall now.
Right.
How did we end up overall? What was our overall carrying cost? What was our overall margin across all the machines we sold? And making sure that's in the right ratio. When I was working for the manufacturer, as tractor manager, that was the things we were doing. We weren't looking at what was warranty costs on each individual machine. We were looking at what was the warranty spend on every machine on average. Right. What was the program expense on average? We lost money on some because we gave out huge discounts, but because our average was where we needed it to be, everybody was okay.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing in the dealer world as well. When you're talking about balancing inventory, is how did we do on used equipment? How did we do on our sprayers? How did we do on our 2-year-old bucket of equipment? And allowing for some of that fluctuation to be, the entire business did okay. We met our goals.
Yep. And that's sometimes the law of averages works in your favor.
Well, it gives you the freedom to make some calls that you know are right when you know that you can, when it's part of a bigger picture.
For sure.
You know, we used to be in the world that don't sell it below this amount, or you know, for any reason whatsoever, and it's like, well, no, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah, you have some winners and some losers, and you hope that you have more winners than you do losers at the end of the day.
Well, you said it there. You used to hope.
Yeah.
Now you can know.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the diff. That's where tools like what we have it really makes a difference.
Yep. And you've always been able to know that. By the way, you've always been able to know that. It's just you got to believe in what you're doing.
You got to believe.
There's a lot of people that.
And then
go ahead.
You got to believe it, and you also had to take the time with your yellow pad to run the 10 key and figure out what the totals were. Yep. Now it's just see what it is, and the machine will tell you.
The data never lies. You just have to believe it, and that's what it comes down to. So
it will always tell the story.
It will definitely do that. You just have to.
And you can always make data tell the story you want it to.
Sure, and that's another thing too. You can twist and turn and carve out and leave this out and add this in. And next thing you know, oh look, it's exactly what we thought. Look at that. Yeah.
Well, you know, as we've seen people adopt some of the newer analytics tools, it's amazing how many times before the first argument would be who prepared these numbers.
Yeah.
And then you would start to actually look at the numbers once you believe them.
Right.
But now when you've got standard reports that just rerun and you've got things that are standardized, you're not spending that time, that effort wondering, wait a minute, did they actually calculate it right? No, it's the same calculation. We use it every week for the last 4 years. It's the same calculation versus whose spreadsheet was this?
Right, exactly. It reminds me of I love The Office, and there's one scene when the Michael Scott Paper Company finally realized it was selling stuff cheaper than it was buying it for, and he says, "Crunch the numbers again," and the guy's like, "There's nothing to crunch," and he's like, "Crunch it again." The guy like hits enter or something. He's like, "Oh, yep, still the same." So. Yeah. So yeah,
so many life lessons from that show.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So, well, Jason, that's a pretty good place to stop, man. If folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what's going on over at Anvil AppWorks, what's the best way to do that?
You can do that at sales@anvilappworks.com or check us out on our website at anvilappworks.com, where we've got a lot of blogs and customer stories and case studies telling you how some of your peers have done the exact same things you've heard us talk about here. So again, that's anvilappworks.com. Sign up for our newsletter, sign up for a demo right there, or send us that email at sales@anvilappworks.com.
Right on. Well, Jason, appreciate you being on the podcast, man.
Pleasure as always.
Right on, man. I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. Go to LinkedIn at Moving Iron Podcast. I'm on Snapchat now at Moving Iron Podcast, and TikTok, I think, at Moving Iron Podcast. I know I'm on TikTok, but I'm pretty sure it's Moving Iron Podcast. So check it out there. Go to Moving Iron LLC for everything Moving Iron related. Should have some big announcements coming out here. Here in about a couple weeks. I'll see some things pop up on there, so check that out there as well. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour with Jason Houl. Let's move some iron, folks. Out.
Moving iron in the 21st century.